All right, we're starting part 2 of our Procurement Without Pain series that was influenced by a person just like you. So you should write into and tell me what things you're interested to learn more about and what help you need, and I will create custom content for y'all out there in TV land. All right, so let's do this together. Now, last episode, if you didn't go back and listen to it, please go back and listen to that one first. We talked about reframing how we see procurement and the contracts. We talked about the hot potato mental model that we're thinking through. So think about where the hot potato exists, where the risk exists, and how we manage it. Now, going into that, we said that companies, right, big entities have processes, have ways of operating. And if we're dealing with risk, wouldn't we have a process for dealing with risk in general? And if a major risk is in procurement, it's an opportunity as well, right? It's how we get things done in the make-buy decision. We should have a process for doing it, and companies do, right? And so remember, you are not a renegade. You are a person that operates effectively in a system, and we're going to follow the best practices. So this listener out there wrote me and was taking a quiz with some other provider. No big deal. They probably just didn't know us before they picked that provider. No big deal. Now they do. And they had some question where it was like the answer choices. One of them was pick a specific type of contract or negotiate equipment costs or use the organizational procurement process. Now I won't read the question because I don't want to give good or bad to that provider, but you get the essence. It was like, do we just like pick and go with a contract? Do we negotiate the thing ourselves, or do we follow the organizational procurement process? Now, I think this individual was like, hey, this is the ideal kind of contract. I know best, reasonably, because they're smart, and we'll pick the contract type. Now, the right answer, and I'm thinking it through as you are, is to follow the organizational procurement process. Because if we were to go back in the question, it'd be a little bit more depth. We want to have an advocate, a guide. It's a partnership for setting up these procurements. Think of a team sport and not an individual sport. So PMI wants you to be a pro inside your company, wants you to be a star. And a star isn't a renegade. A star is a person that works well in the system, okay? And so you're going to work in these situations and questions. You're going to work with procurement, legal, sourcing, etc. You're going to follow the processes, the established templates, the approved thresholds. You're going to do those things as you go through the procurement process because the company needs to be taken care of and everybody needs to be kept in alignment because you're representing said entity. Makes sense, right? If it was your name on the marquee, you wouldn't want somebody out there wheeling and dealing under your name. That makes more sense, right? So what the procurement policies, templates, approvals, thresholds, all this stuff, process will help you do is help you follow the make-buy decision, make a good one, follow and create a sourcing plan, set up and put out the RFPs, RFI, RFQ, whatever you need to do, and I'll explain those in a section, have the source selection criteria, evaluation criteria, etc., and maybe have a multiple, tiered structural process for making these decisions and setting up these contracts. So all that stuff, as you walk into it, it's a little bit like walking into the forest. It gets a little scary if you're on your own, but if you have buddies, experienced guides, all these things, you can walk into the nastiest forest, the scariest forest in the world, and you're going to be all right because you got a team behind you. That's what we're trying to do. So if we broke down there and I mentioned a bunch of stuff and you're like, man, shoot, they flew through my head. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. Seemed like a wild party of acronyms. Let's slow it down. Let's take it down from 11 down to 7.25. So let's go make versus buy. You know that. At night, you're tired. You get it. You're like, man, should we cook at home? We got the stuff in the cupboard. Or order takeout, a little DoorDash tonight. Which one is better? And you make that decision on an evening by evening basis, right? That's essentially make versus buy. Do we build it? Do we make it? Or do we go out and get help for it? That's the decision that you're doing at night with DoorDash. And then the sourcing plan, I mentioned that. You'd be like, what's the sourcing plan, bro? It's kind of like vacation planning, in a sense, for your project. Hey, what's the process for booking the right package? How do we evaluate that? How do we compare hotels? How do we do these things? Do we hire a travel agent or not? It's like the strategy one will use to get to the finish line in a safe, reasonable way for procurement. Makes sense. Now, the other thing that I mentioned was RFI, RFQ, RFP, all that stuff, RF somethings, right? Those are the different levels or steps one would need help with. So, say you're out there and you're looking for a computer, right? And you can just go like put out an RFI to a buddy. You could say, hey, Sally, you know computers. What computer should I buy? Here's what I got going on. And so Sally would be getting the RFI, request for information, would say, hey, I think you should buy a Dell, blah, 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 blah. Sweet. That's a type of, RFI, request for information that you might see out there. Now, a little bit deeper, you might, send a little bit out there, RFQ, and it'd say, we're trying to buy the Dell XYZ computer. Give me prices for that one. Or millions or whatever you're buying, right? That's an RFQ. You're saying, I need a quote, a number for this specific thing. And then the third one is what I did when I got a computer for my business, for me, personal computer. And so I put out an RFP to my father-in-law, who's a computer guy, and I said, I want you to design me the ideal computer given this kind of constraints, this kind of thing. This is how I use it. I'm filming a bunch. I'm producing videos. I'm doing podcasts. I'm running a website, blah, 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 blah. Here's what I got. And then he went out there, did his little, wizardry, pulled it together, designed me an ideal computer, and said, here's what I'm going to do for you. This kind of computer with this kind of processor and this kind of thing and that and the other thing. And he came up with the perfect solution for me, and he sent me a proposal. This is what it's going to cost. We talked back and forth and nailed it down. I got the computer. You're listening to it now. Beautiful. All right. So that's RFI, RFQ, RFP. See it in your head. My job is to create pictures in your head so that you can use the pictures. Easier to see pictures than long old words. I don't even know if I can read at this point. Okay. And so as we go down deeper, we got evaluation or source selection criteria. You know what that is. It's like, how are we going to evaluate something? Said, the specific thing is the contract, right? The bids that are coming in. If we were to evaluate a restaurant, we'd say, hey, we're going to make 50% of our decision based on the food quality. The second on the service, that's like 30% maybe, and 20% on like the feel, the je ne sais quoi, the vibe, the whatever. That's what we're going to do out there, okay? So we have a clear criteria. If it was all about the food, people would know, hey, it's all about the food. But we said food, service, vibe, and these at percentages. Cool. And then as we go in there, we want to understand how to use this stuff. So one of the things that the podcast listener wrote in was like, hey, I saw a couple questions here and there about a multi-tiered or multi-layered contract. What's the deal there? Now, this is a more nuanced thing, but I want you to think about it in the sense of like, what's reasonable? Like, what would you do in real life? Would you, if you had, multiple different, phases of a contract or phases of a build, would you arbitrarily use the same kind of contract? You'd be like, maybe, but I gotta know the details. So let's talk about a kitchen remodel. Like, my wife came to me and said, hey, we gotta remodel the kitchen. After my stomach dropped to the floor, I'd pick it up and I'd say, all right, how are we gonna do this thing, right? And she'd say, well, I'm going to pay a designer, maybe, to come out here and look at it, talk to me, draw up plans. And then once we lock down plans, then I'll contract with a some contractor. I know this person or these people. There's a couple that we're going to go to. We're going to lock in like a fixed price for doing exactly what we designed. Bing, bang, boom. We'll have a kitchen in blah, blah, blah weeks. All right. Now, would we use the same contract? Because we talked about contract vehicles last time for that. No. The front half feels like more exploratory, more discussion-based, stuff like that. Then the back end, we know what we want and nail it down. So the back end is firm fixed, right? That's exactly what we're going to do, all right? It could be maybe cost plus, but let's go firm fixed because I don't want to be taking too much for a ride. We know exactly what it is. And we're not exploring with different kinds of tiles. We'll do that in the design process. Now, the paying for the designer maybe hourly, that could technically be time and material, right? As they come out, they spend 10 hours, they bill it reasonably, they do some mock-ups, some design, some stuff like that. They make a little standard operating or a statement of work, all that jazz. We pay them for their time. That could be time and materials. So essentially that's multi-tiered, multi-layered contract because the kitchen remodel has phases. The designer side, the lock it down, build it side. That makes sense. So PMI kind of likes to challenge you in a good way to make you think. They're trying to evolve your perspective. And you got to thank them for that. Oh, cool. Now I see things a little more in technicolor, if you will. Risk is applied to each contract in the phases in the right way. Flexibility early in the example that I gave, commitment and detail later. Dig it, man. So we're learning here, I think. And as we go down to the next step, I'm going to give you a couple little pitfalls or holes that you might fall into in questions. And I don't want you to fall into them. I want you to see that pothole, walk directly around it. So if you see any answer that's like, oh, pay the cost now, pay them ahead of time, just do it this one time, anything like that, wrong. Always use the process. Hey, we're behind in payments. We need to be, or we're behind in, the business is behind in some kind of payments. They need to be paid up front instead of the end. No, we're just always going to follow the contractual payment requirements that are set in the deal. Okay, that's the way it goes. And then also there may be some questions where it makes you feel like we don't have any time. We need to get things done. Maybe it was a mistake that you made or an oversight. Oh my gosh, we've decided to source it out instead of do it internally. There's no time. Oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. Like they'll say one of the answers is pick this contract, get it rolling, negotiate, done. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to leverage procurement as a team sport with the internal team helping you out, procurement, legal, sourcing, etc. And you're going to follow the procedural requirements, right? And the organizational requirements. So don't make that mistake. And then just because we want to nail it down, I want you to really nail down in your head a visual for cost plus versus time and materials. Cost plus, think of that as they give you receipts every day. We spent this, and you give them a little bit at the end for the bonus, right? And then the rates are the time and materials. Hey, every day it's $100 per hour. That's what it is. It's just firmed up, okay? So really, to bring this all back together, think about unclear scope, urgent needs, start with time and materials. We could possibly shift a firm fix, later if we can nail it down, but unclear scope, we need to get time and materials. That's the best way to deal with it, okay? If we have a crystal clear scope, we need to know that we're going to do fixed price because it's doable. And if it's an uncertain kind of like R&D type thinking project, then it's cost plus, where they get reimbursed for it, right? And so we're never going to, do workarounds. We're never just going to do the contract negotiation ourselves. We're always going to lean on the experts and the organizational processes, right? So if you leave here, I want you to stick this in your back pocket so that you always walk away with it. Contracts, think of them as risk placement tools. Think about the hot potato. The question is our scope stable enough to move the risk to the seller, like we know exactly what we're building, or is it best to share it as we go through there? And then would flexibility create value over time? And so that's like the multi-tiered strategy, right? And we're always going to leverage the organizational playbook, and we're never going to improvise. That's not where it is, okay? So if procurement has been a tough spot, a blind spot, or whatever, this is your podcast. This is what's here to help you. And so think through all those pictures that I gave you. If we're building the kitchen table or something that's specific and it's fixed, we can do a fixed price contract. If it's like the exploratory, sciencey type project, doesn't have to be science, but you get the thing, there's more curiosity, then we're doing cost plus, right? And if it's like a taxi meter type thing, hey, I just need you to take me across town. I need this many people to help us out for this time. It's more of time and materials. So those are the things. I just want visuals in your head. Hopefully this is helpful. Let me know if it is. And also let me know what I can help you with. I can get you a plan. I can get you support. I can get you to the end. And we'll take care of it. Lock, stock, and everything in between. All right? So have fun today. And you know the deal. Reach out to me. 757-759-5282. See you later, alligator.